Tress of the Emerald Sea, the first of the 4 secret novels and the one to launch the year of Sanderson, and today we break it open to dive deeper into its secrets. Hello fellow readers and readresses, this video is going to be a combination of a spoiler-free review of Tress of the Emerald Sea and a deeper dive into the Cosmere secrets hidden in this book. Let's begin with the spoiler-free part. Tress of the Emerald Sea is an adult fantasy that is a standalone novel within the Cosmere universe. I'm calling it a standalone, and technically it is, but I recommend you don't start your Cosmere journey here, because you will not only miss out on the Easter eggs hidden in the book, but even worse, you will lack a context about a lot of the things that are happening, especially at the climax. In my personal opinion, before you pick this book up, you should read at the very least Elantris, Warbreaker, Mistborn Era 1 and 2, and the first 2 books in the Stormlight Archive. There is overlap with other books in the Cosmere, but reading these will ensure that you know what's going on and won't be wondering, what is this character doing? Is this magic? Why is this not explained? Etc. The book itself is the ultimate middle grade for adults, and if that sounds like an oxymoron, just wait until you read it. I bet you'll understand what I mean. The book is whimsical, and because of the style of the narrator, quite funny in a dorky rather than edgy way. Speaking of the narrator, it's surprisingly not Brandon Sanderson himself. The story might have been written by him, but it's actually told by the most notorious Cosmere character out there. And if you haven't yet guessed who that is based on what I just said, don't worry, it's revealed rather early in the book. The story is set on Lumar, which is a quote-unquote backwater planet with the most unique world building in the Cosmere we've seen so far. I was initially thinking of describing it to you, but I ultimately decided that it will be best if you experience it on your own. What I will say though is that it's pretty insane and something I have never seen in any book so far. The author has managed to create a planet that is so unnatural when compared to Earth, yet pretty easy to get used to and fully realized. The characters we follow are of varying ages and backgrounds, with Tress, who is an 18-year-old girl, being our main protagonist. And there is a lot to like about all of them, even the ones that appear on stage for just a few pages. To illustrate that, in the beginning of the book, Tress is trying to sneak up on a ship, and some of her fellow islanders help her, and the way that it's set up and executed is at once heartwarming, relatable, and hilarious. But more than that, I remembered the characters involved in that scene throughout the book with so much fondness, and still do. The plot in its nature is rather simplistic. Somebody gets kidnapped and our main character embarks on a journey to save them. And the execution is in a lot of ways what you might expect. A nice adventure where our main character meets people, overcomes challenges, and grows. There were also a few twists which brought a nice flavor to the story. I gave the book 5 stars, and I will highly recommend it to anyone who is even remotely interested in the Cosmere. What makes this book unique, besides the interesting narration style that I already mentioned, are the juicy Cosmere nuggets that are sprinkled throughout the book and gave us a few more pieces of the puzzle to put together this lovely universe. We will speak of those next. Now let's dive into the important things we learn about the Cosmere from Tress of the Emerald Sea. By the way, for this section, I will assume that you have read Tress and are wondering whether you missed something about it. Additionally, there will be mild to major spoilers for other Cosmere books in the different points. I will put a notice in the title screen of each point. Let's go. Number 1. Hoyt gains Aon-Dor. From what we have seen in the Cosmere so far, Hoyt is world-hopping around, influencing events, and gathering different investiture manifestations, or magical powers if you will. At the end of the book, Hoyt finally acquires Aon-Dor to add to his other abilities of light-weaving, awakening, allomancy, and ruin knows what else. This is not entirely surprising. I was expecting him to do that at some point, but it sets the stage for a few other discoveries that we will discuss a little bit later. Number 2. We meet the sorceress again. And speaking of all kinds of powers being gathered, how about our lovely sorceress Rena? From the text we gather that she is an Elantrian and a particularly skilled one. Quote, I mean, I would too if I literally glowed. Her kind tended to prefer clothing and other accents that didn't distract from their luminous nature. But the truth is, we have seen her before. In Mistborn Secret History, she was one of the Ire members and had a run-in with Kelsier's ghost, for lack of a better word. However, we now find her way stronger than she was in her previous appearance, which comes confirmed to us by the dragon Syzyx, who says about her, "There is precisely one being I fear on this planet. She has also acquired quite a few skills we didn't know she had before, such as light weaving and awakening, which obviously begs the question, when and how did she obtain those, and for now we have no information on that matter. I personally can't remember any signs of her having obtained any of the metallic arts, but given the fact that in Mistborn Secret History she was trying to ascend as a vessel of Preservation's shard, I don't doubt that she is at least seeking to obtain those powers. So basically, Hoid is not the only investiture hoarder in the universe, and maybe that will play an important role later on. Number 3. The Iriali backstory. If you read the Stormlight Archive, you might remember the Kingdom of Iri. It's located in northwestern Roshar and appears in a few interludes and a handful of chapters. What we know of the appearance of the Iriali people is that they have golden skin and hair and mostly yellow eyes. During an Arcanum Unbounded signing back in 2016, we learned from Brandon Sanderson that the Iriali are not native to Roshar and have come from another planet in the Cosmere. I believe Roshar was their 4th planet or some such, and there is a suspicion that they have been on Scadrial before. However, in Tress of the Emerald Sea, we get another piece of the puzzle of their origin. In Chapter 2, Charlie comments about the writing on one of Tress's cups. "It's old Iriali," he said. "They vanished, you know. The entire people, poof, there one day, gone the next. Their island left uninhabited. Now that was 300 years ago, so no one alive has ever met any of them, but they supposedly had golden hair, the color of sunlight." So we have definitive confirmation about another of the planets that they have occupied, Lumar itself, as well as a deepening of the mystery of their origin. Keep an eye out for the Iriali, my friends. They will be big in the Cosmere future. Number 4. Cosmere Timeline. There are a few distinct things that hint at the place of this book in the Cosmere timeline. Among those are the fact that we see Ulam in this book, which signifies that Harmony, or Sazed if you prefer, has already released the Kandras, as well as Hoid obtaining Aondor at the end. In combination with the Iriali leaving the planet 300 years ago while spending thousands of years on Roshar, the only way this timeline makes sense is if this story takes place after the first half of the Stormlight Archive series. Number 5. The Luhel Bond and the Ethers. In The Lost Metal, the last book of the Mistborn Era 2 series, we learned that the Ethers are an ancient variety of invested entities present in the Cosmere and believed by some to predate Adonalsium. We learn a lot about the Ethers in The Lost Metal, including the fact that they can bond with humans. But what Tress of the Emerald Sea revealed for the first time is the name of that connection, the Luhel Bond. I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of this correctly, by the way. When Tress waters the Midnight Spores for the first time, the Luhel Bond is explained as follows. Midnight Spores are different. In fact, they're closer to how the Ethers are supposed to work. Bringing Midnight Spores to life creates a temporary bond, a kind of symbiosis between host and ether. Unlike the Nahel Bond, which trades in consciousness and anchoring to reality, the Luhel Bond trades in physical matter, in this case, water. So the Luhel Bond is basically a resource trade between two physical entities, a strictly physical quid pro quo, if you will. And the fact that Hoid juxtaposes it to the Nahel Bond, which deals in exchanging power for consciousness, i.e. between the cognitive and the physical realm, makes me question whether there are more types of bonds out there, such that address the spiritual realm as well, for example. And what makes me consider this even further is the way the mechanics of spore growth after being given water is explained by Ulam. Hint of a catalyst, water in this case, and they pull investiture directly from the spiritual realm to explosively germinate. And the fact that Tress could influence the green spore vines after giving them water to grow in a certain way, for example, makes me think this is another type of bond, since we have already established that the midnight spores and the other type of spores don't work the same way. Who knows, I might be reaching too far, but I mean, this is Sanderson. I wouldn't be surprised if he's thought of that as well. Anyway, just a little food for thought. I also wanted to stop on the name of this bond, Luhel. We don't know what Luhel refers to, but considering that it sounds similar to Nahel, which is a Rosharan word that means the bond to divinity, my money is on the bond to the ancients or something. By the way, we still don't know the Ether's planet of origin, but we know for sure that it's neither Lumar nor its moons. As Brandon Sanderson mentions in the postscript, there will be more talk of Ethers in the future, as this isn't the primary planet they originated upon. What we learn about the Ethers from Tress, though, is still quite important, like the fact that salt and silver kill them. We also find their very interesting relation to metals. Quote, "The crystals responded immediately, pulling toward the metal, which from the slate gray color seemed to be simple iron. The other tool made the crystals grow away from it. It was of polished silvery metal, steel for those who compulsively track these things. So it would appear that the ethers abide by some of the allomantic laws. I wonder if they abide by any of the others. Number 6. Lumar is close to Scadrial. I believe that Lumar is at least somewhat physically close to Scadrial. This is just a conjecture on my part, but here are the facts that I'm basing this on. The fact that we have a Kandra on Lumar openly jabbering about body parts and its immortality was my first clue, but that in and of itself is not enough proof. What made me suspect this more was the ending of chapter 53, where Tress states, "Don't wake me up unless Death himself has shown up, nails in his eyes." Marsh, in his Inquisitor form, has either been on Lumar, or somehow the legend of him has spread there widely enough that people from different cultures consider it mainstream. Call me crazy, but I don't think these are both coincidences. So just now, while I was editing the video, I ran into this map posted on a Reddit thread, I will link it in the video description, that shows Lumar as the planet closest to Scadrial, so I'm guessing my suspicions were correct. Number 7. Rosharan evil on Lumar. In chapter 28, Ulam reveals to Tress what the Midnight Spores do. Quote, "They create midnight ether," Ulam said, "also called midnight essence, a blob of goo that will imitate a nearby object or entity. The ether stays under your control for as long as you sustain it." And if you have read the Stormlight Archive up to and including Oathbringer, you have already seen the Midnight Essence in action. The first time we were introduced to it was in The Way of Kings in one of Dalinar's visions, where he fought it. Then Shallan had to fight it as well, but in real life this time in Urithiru in Oathbringer. Curiously, we were told that the Midnight Essence was produced, for the lack of a better word, by Rishefir, or the Midnight Mother, who is one of the Rosharan Unmade and is supposed to be a splinter of Odium. So how is it that we have a gigantic Midnight Essence factory on one of the Lumar moons? Could it be that Rishefir has migrated to that moon from Roshar? Could this hint at Odium's fate at the end of the first part of Stormlight Archive? Could it be that he was maybe destroyed and now Rishefir is free to move around as much as she wants? I wonder. Number 8. What happened to Adonalsium? There is a lot of information about Adonalsium's shattering scattered throughout multiple Cosmere books, and we know for a fact that Hoid was involved in that in one way or another. I won't stop on all we knew about Adonalsium's shattering up until Tress of the Emerald Sea, because it will take forever. But what we learn in Tress for a fact, and probably most of us have suspected until that point, is that Hoid was definitely involved in the plot to kill Adonalsium. That is probably the craziest, most reckless thing I've ever heard someone say, and I was literally a part of a secret plot to kill God. Now, I don't know about any other gods being killed or even existing in the Cosmere. So I think we can consider this a conclusive proof, but if you need more convincing, here is the last nail in the proverbial coffin. Quoting Hoid again, "For your own good, you see, I've heard those words, I've said those words, the words that proclaim, in bold-faced arrogance, I don't trust you to make your own decisions. The words we pretend will soften the blow, yet instead layer condescension on top of already existing pain, like dirt on a corpse. Oh yes, I've said these words. I said them with 16 other people, in fact. If that doesn't refer to the shattering of Adonalsium, I will eat a handful of midnight spores." Not only does he admit to outright conspiring to kill Adonalsium, but he also hints at the reasons for that happening, for Adonalsium's own good. Was he, Adonalsium, going through something? Given how Hoid makes a parallel between those two situations and seems to at least partially regret his involvement, I am assuming he and the 16 perspective shards decided to off him to prevent him from doing something they thought foolish. What that might be, we can't yet know, and what I just said is just a guess. I suspect we will find out soon enough, either at the end of the first part of the Stormlight Archive or else in the second part. Either way, I am even more curious now to learn the entire story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed both my summary and my theories. Please let me know if I missed something or if you disagree with anything I just said. I would love to have a discussion on the topic. Preparing, filming, and editing this video took a lot of time, so if you could find it in your heart to drop a like, I will be forever in your debt. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to see my spoiler-free and obsessively thorough review of Arcanum Unbounded, check out this video. Bye!